Hilde, who's she's for Partos as well. She's recording this session right now. And then I want to give the floor to Frederike and all the other moderators and speakers of this session. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much, Sonja, for this introduction. Also, a big welcome to you all for joining us today in this session, Feminist for Forest. Happy that you're all here to join, and let's make it a festive and inspirational and interactive session today. Among you, I see a lot of known faces. But for the ones who do not know me, I am Frederike Holly. I work for IUCN NL, and I'm gender focal point at our organization. So what Sonja just said, so there is this super nice session festival, and I saw there are so many interesting sessions taking place on really important topics such as climate justice, gender, inclusivity, youth, women's rights, intersectionality, civic space, and leadership. And this session will tie most of these topics all together, and we link them to biodiversity, and more specifically to forests. So today we're going to emphasize the nexus between climate, biodiversity, forests actually, and indigenous people, local communities, women, and youth. And it's a lot, I know, but it's a very important link that I would very much like to discuss with you all. And I hope it to be an interactive session. So after we had the presentations today, please, share the discussion. If you have any remarks or interesting experience you would like to share, really throw them in the group. Forests, the lungs of the earth. And that's how they are usually called, forests. They are key for our survival, but not only for carbon storage. Forests are so much more than only that. And I can only grasp the faintest idea of what these massive areas mean to people around the globe. Forests are actually worlds within worlds. They consist of millions of plants, of animals, fungi, everything. And they all live their lives within this huge ecosystem. And like I said, it's, for survival or finding shelter. And it's, this massive universe in itself with all these people, living and animals living their daily lives. This interaction between plants and animals, but also between people that live there or live close by, sorry, I'm losing my text. And it's about these people living in and around these forests and their connection with this intelligent, age-old functioning ecosystem. But we all know that forests are under immense pressure. They are the subject often of competing claims, mostly of foreign claims. And these huge patches of forests are often converted into industrial agriculture, in mining pits, and are being overexploited. And plants, animals, and people are evicted as their home and shelter is destroyed. They lose their breeding places, their waters, their livelihoods, and their places where they come for spirituality or for culture. People's rights and environmental rights are grossly violated in these situations. The ones impacted most by these losses are indigenous people, local communities, women, youth, often the most marginalized people, who, on top of feeling the largest impact of deforestation and climate change, they're often the ones least invited to the table, listened to, and mostly excluded from taking decisions on their lands, waters, and forests. And currently, you hear a lot about carbon offsetting, for example, by planting trees, A lot of countries made huge, big pledges, and it is an important tool, don't get me wrong. But what use is planting trees if behind your back existing forests are being cut down? So step one always is to protect the forests that are still here. And in order to save and to protect the forests, women, indigenous people, local communities, youth, and other marginalized groups need to be included in decision-making around their forests. And what is needed to get there? So this session is about that. How they take up roles in forest management, how they benefit sustainably from its resources. And in this session, you will hear the inspirational stories of the Cerrado and Chaco Pantanal in Bolivia and in Bugoma Forest in Uganda. Unfortunately, one speaker, Ernestine from Cameroon, is at another panel as we speak, so she won't be here to share her incredible story. So we have a very exciting program ahead with exceptional speakers. But first, before we start off, I would like to know who is in the room. And I'm going to ask you 4 questions. And by way of answering, switch on and off your cameras. I see a lot of people have their cameras closed, but please, everyone turn them on so we can see your faces. Say hi to everyone. Hi, this is nice to see faces. Just waiting for a few more to switch on their cameras. Okay, and then the first question I'm going to ask. If you feel this is about you, keep your camera on, and if not, then switch it off. So are you a gender expert? And don't be afraid by the word expert. It means, do you know some things about gender, women's rights or not? So it's from a bit to a lot. Keep your camera on if you're, okay. So we definitely have some experts here. That's great. Okay, next question. Do we have some climate justice experts in the room? Switch on your cameras if you are, and switch them off if you feel like, oh, no, I don't actually know that much about this topic. Okay. Well, we still have some. Okay, great. And then another question. Are you a forestry or biodiversity expert? Just, if you know a bit, keep it on. If you don't know that much, turn it off. Okay, this is good to know. Perfect. And then final question. I know a lot, but I know a lot on different topics than the ones we just discussed above. Or is this a very difficult question to ask? Okay, but I see Freddie still in the room, but Freddie knows and gender and knows a lot about forests and a lot about other topics then. Right, Freddie? Okay, great.
Yes, yes.
Perfect. All right, well, let's move on to the next part, and that's the Kahoot. So I'm going to share my screen. I hope it's working. I prepared just, to set the scene about forests, to start off in a few discussions. Let me see if this works. So the question is to get your phones out, go to www.kahoot, and then mention this number. Is it all working? See, you're still busy. Okay, I see people popping up. That's great. Keep them coming. Marianne, Camilla, Christy. Should I give some more minutes or are we good to go? We have 14 people. I'll give you 10 more seconds. Are we good to go? Okay. Then I'd say let's go for it. When I press start, I'm going to ask you 4 questions. You get 20 seconds to answer each of these questions. And then we're just going to dive into the topic. Okay, 3, 2, 1, go. How much land of our planet is covered with forests? 15%, 25%, 31%, or the 41%? Are we all experts in this topic? I thought like 1/3 knew a lot about forests. Time's up. All right. So we have the correct answer is C, 31%. So almost 1/3 of our planet's land is covered in forests. And you can say that's about 4 billion hectares. Probably a hard to imagine figure. And 93% of these forests are actually natural forests and 7% is planted. But like we just said, you know, forests are not just forests for carbon, they are so much more. And yeah, people have so much different meaning for forests. Okay, anyone who would like to comment on this, or are we, who thought otherwise? Was this a very difficult question? Were you just guessing or okay, I get no response.
If you want, I don't know if you want to shout out Frederique, but I kind of cheated. I saw that in our policy brief the most recent days, so it's fresh in my mind.
Oh, well, that's good. Excellent. All right, let's move on to the next question. Okay. Do we want scores? Sonja is the best. Marianne, Annabelle. Okay, yeah, you were quick. It was fresh in your mind. All right, next one. How much land of our planet is owned or governed by indigenous people and local communities? 15%, 21%, 40%, or 51%? I see numbers flying. I think people know the answer. Next time I'll make sure there's a nice little music behind the quiz. 7 seconds. Fill out your, okay. Many people thought it was at least 15%, whereas it's actually 21% of the planet's land that is governed or owned by indigenous people and local communities. Is this a surprise or is this yeah, I see some nodding. All right, we're moving on to the next question. First, the scores, of course. So we have Hilde. Good job. All right. Third question. Are you ready? What is the single largest driver of deforestation? I bet you know this one. A, is it logging, industrial agriculture, wildfires, or mining and infrastructure projects? Answers are flying over the roof. Yeah. We have everyone. 3, 2, 1. All right. Yeah, so most people know that in fact it's industrial agriculture. And every year we lose around 10 million hectares of forest. Okay, and then we're moving on to the final question. First score, of course. Hilda, are you? You're losing. Jana, well done. You're number one. Let's keep it up. One final round. How many people rely on forests for agroforestry? 0.8 billion people, 1.2, 2 billion, or 4 billion people? 10 seconds left. Okay, there is still some doubt. Numbers are close, but in fact, the correct answer was 1.2 billion people. They mostly practice agroforestry, and some 300 to 350 million people live within or adjacent to dense forests, depending on them for their subsistence and livelihoods. Okay, so let's see the score. Who is our big winner of this test? Who's on the podium? Marianne, number 3. Good for you. Big applause. Number 2, Annabelle. And who is our winner? Sonia. Good for you. Well done. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. How do I stop share? Yes. All right. And with that, we sort of fed our knowledge a bit more about forest. And now I would like to move on to the actually exciting part, which of course is one of our speakers, Carmen Miranda. And Carmen is the founder and director of Savia. She has more than 25 years of experience working in and with protected areas in Bolivia. You have worked with indigenous people in Eastern Bolivia to promote community management and sustainable use of natural resources. We're very happy that you're here, and you prepared an amazing video, which we're going to show first. So you all get a better sense of the work of Carmen and her team in Cerrado and the Chaco Pantanal in the dry forests. And you hear a lot about the multipliers of change, an exciting term, and Carmen will explain it in the video. So Nadine, if you could share the video of Carmen. Yeah.
Savia es una organización de la sociedad civil que viene trabajando desde el año 2002 en temas ambientales. Y hemos venido acá a Santa Cruz a empezar nuestras actividades en medio ambiente el año 2006. Desde entonces venimos desarrollando una serie de programas vinculadas a la conservación de la biodiversidad y nos hemos interiorizado muchísimo en lo que es la dinámica y la problemática ambiental de una extensa región que se encuentra hacia el este del país. Estamos trabajando en las áreas del bosque seco chiquitano, el pantanal, los ambientes del Chaco, que se encuentran en este departamento también, y hacia el norte en la zona amazónica que ingresa a este departamento. Este es un departamento de una gran extensión y tiene diferentes unidades ecológicas y también un conjunto muy grande de áreas protegidas. Nuestra labor ha sido una labor permanente y continua desde el año 2006 hasta el presente, y entre nuestro trabajo hemos privilegiado el trabajo con las mujeres, principalmente de los pueblos indígenas y las comunidades locales, y así como los jóvenes. Hasta ahora venimos desarrollando una serie de actividades vinculadas a la educación ambiental, también desarrollando acciones vinculadas a mejores prácticas de manejo de estos ecosistemas. Toda esta región en estos últimos años ha sido transformada de una manera bastante drástica, principalmente por el cambio de uso del suelo que se está generando para el establecimiento, en primer lugar, de grandes áreas de agricultura industrial. Uno de los productos más importantes que estos espacios están cultivando es la agricultura de soya, ¿no? Que sabemos que principalmente son semillas transgénicas, y para su agricultura pues se necesita limpiar todos los bosques, y en estos últimos años la transformación de los ecosistemas ha sido realmente muy grande, ¿no? Estamos perdiendo bosques y se están habilitando áreas agropecuarias. Pues aparte de la soya, también este departamento está promoviendo la crianza de ganado, principalmente para la exportación de carne vacuna. Es una lástima ver toda esta transformación y la pérdida de estos grandes árboles, y lo que no se comprende todavía hasta ahora por parte de todo el sector empresarial es el costo que está significando para el futuro de este departamento, puesto que estamos en una zona de transición hacia áreas muy secas, ¿no? Y sin árboles no va a haber agua. También en este espacio geográfico existen territorios indígenas, ¿no? Y comunidades locales. Savia viene trabajando, impulsando actividades productivas alternativas con las mujeres indígenas, ¿no? Que están utilizando los recursos locales para fomentar su economía. Los resultados han sido muy particulares en ese tipo de contactos interétnicos, compartiendo conocimientos, conociéndose entre ellas, por ejemplo, las mujeres del Chaco y las mujeres de las comunidades chiquitanas, compartiendo preocupaciones y aprendiendo también aspectos vinculados al manejo de recursos tradicionales interétnicos.
Perdemos nuestros hogares, no tenemos alimentación, nos enfermamos y el peor caso, nos morimos. Que tengan conciencia que el fuego es dañino y perjudicial. Gracias.
Por otra parte, Savia viene trabajando en la formación de jóvenes. Tenemos un programa de sensibilización de jóvenes y niños vinculados a las comunidades locales, y en estos últimos años se ha logrado concretar un equipo bastante grande de multiplicadores ambientales. Son jóvenes que se sensibilizan ante la problemática ambiental de sus comunidades y que van difundiendo el mensaje en diferentes espacios. También otro de los aspectos que hemos desarrollado en estos últimos años ha sido Operación Jaguar. Este programa, que se ha desarrollado durante varios años, también ha tenido un impacto muy importante en lo que es la sensibilización de las poblaciones locales para la conservación de esta especie, que lamentablemente se encuentra en un proceso de deterioro en todos los bosques del continente suramericano. Esa es una experiencia muy bonita que podemos mostrar, porque en la medida de que la población local empieza a profundizar en su conocimiento en la dinámica de los procesos de la naturaleza, los compromisos son a largo plazo por parte de ellos. La labor desarrollada por Savia ha sido sinergizada con los otros constituyentes del programa GLA. Y bueno, sin ese trabajo colaborativo y esa acción sinérgica que realizamos desde cada una de las instituciones en el ámbito del programa GLA, no tendría los resultados que hoy muestran sin esta participación colectiva y sin la confianza y el apoyo de la UICN de Holanda y también sus donantes.
Wow. One round of applause for this brilliant video. Really well done, Carmen and team. It was amazing. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did. It was spectacular, despite the also serious message, of course, and yeah, context you're working in. And so I hope you noted down all your questions. I'm going to ask one question to Carmen, and then we're moving on to Freddie. And then once we finalize that presentation, we're going to do a Q&A with everyone and sort of start up a discussion. But Carmen, the multipliers of change, that's amazing. And it's the youngsters' message, giving the message, you know, forwarding. How did you get them involved? How did you, you know, win them over for the cause you're working on? You're still on mute.
Sorry. Yeah, no, we decided to work with young people because it's so important. It's a priority in our work to try to get more and more people involved in this reality, because the forest area, we are losing so fast the forest area. As I mentioned in the video, unfortunately, the land use change in this country, it's going so fast. And if the next generations were not prepared to take this problematic inside them, will be really a disaster. If the local people don't have the knowledge about what's going on with this big forest, all will be lost. Then we privilege, in this case, to try to develop this program, including different teachers at the school, the women, and also the youngs for that reason.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Carmen. And Freddie, turning to you, Freddie Kaliwani is the Resource Mobilization Manager of EcoTrust, a long-standing partner as well. EcoTrust was established in 1999, so you've been around for some time. EcoTrust is working mostly on green finance, working with smallholders, working on restoration, but also business development. I had the opportunity to visit Freddie and the team of EcoTrust, I think 2 months back. So I saw some of the work you're doing around Bugoma Forest. And yeah, as you can imagine, it was very exciting to see. So Freddie, you are working a lot around gender, women's rights, making sure that women participate in decision-making, management, but connecting the dots with Carmen. Do you work with the youth as well? Do you have them in your program? Yeah. All right. Can you share your screen? I think you have some slides available, right?
Yes, I do. I'm going to share just now.
Perfect. Then the floor is yours, Freddie.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you, Frederick, and I'm happy to be part of this panel this afternoon. It's afternoon in Uganda, where I am. EcoTrust is involved in landscape restoration, and we do that with a model that we call landscape restoration as a business. And so we try to encourage households or smallholder farmers to participate in landscape reforestation because it makes economic sense to them. And the kind of unfortunate thing on our side is that the land in our country is usually titled to men. And so in landscape restoration and forestry, we have found that when we encourage the households to put aside land for woodlots or for agroforestry, we also link that to payments for environmental services. And so we are able to incentivize the households with some payments from carbon and other environmental services, sometimes watershed services, any other services. So, but we have found that when we make these payments, usually because the land belongs to the man, the payments tend to go to the man. And so we were kind of worried that how can we then guarantee that when these small payments are coming out of as rewards to agroforestry and reforestation, we were kind of worried, how then do we guarantee that the entire household benefits? How then do we guarantee that the women who do not own the land titles, how do we guarantee that they're also benefiting? And the youths, equally the youths do not own land. So we're like, how then do we guarantee that we are actually benefiting the entire community? So that's when we started integrating our gender tool. The gender tool is called GALS. It's called Gender Action and Learning System. That is the tool, that is the methodology that we have used to enable us to integrate gender and financial inclusion in landscape restoration. This gender tool gives us the tools that practically can get communities involved in making sure that nobody is left behind. So we understand here that climate change affects people mostly because they depend on need for livelihoods. But in our situation, the women are at a higher risk. The women are at a higher risk because climate change increases what in gender we refer to as their care burden. And this is because in the midst of climate change, which usually manifests as famine and droughts in our area, the women are forced to walk long distances to fetch water, which increases their workload. But also the women in our areas are the main users of natural resources, such as firewood, because that's the main source of fuel wood. And so that can also impact the environment. So we need to target them. So the gender action and GALS system addresses the gender inequalities that increase vulnerabilities of women to climate change. And as I indicated, girls provides the tools that enable us to practically integrate this work. So we need to then look at what are the benefits, what are the benefits? And I think this is the most critical bit, that what does the integration of girls benefit our smallholders? The integration of gender action and learning systems enables women and men to work together. That is the main, it's a community or household planning tool that enables, at the minimum, the spouses to plan together for their households. This means that when the money comes in, we don't have a gender-based violence. Especially, all of us understand that when money comes into the picture, it can stress households. So it has, girls has enabled us to reduce cases of gender-based violence, as well as reducing the care burden of the women. But also, girls has enabled us to increase smallholder farmers' knowledge on the climate change problem, because they sit together and they figure out the causes and they develop strategies and solutions to adapt to climate change. So that joint planning, practical tools that enable joint and then in planning together, again, the communities set achievable actions and targets in line with the change that they've envisioned in terms of adaptation and mitigation. But they also map out potential allies and potential opportunities to respond to climate change in their landscapes. And then also the farmers using the tools, it has enabled the farmers, the smallholders, to employ more climate resistance production methods. But also we train, the way we deliver the girls is we train champions. So we have trained gender champions that are also climate activists within the communities that propagate how women, youths, they're kind of promoting transformational gender activities within the communities. And then, of course, this tool also enables the smallholders to engage with the policymakers in their areas. And so I'll just share one or two of the tools that we are talking about here. The most useful tool for us has been the Vision Road Journey. And I'll show you some pictures at the end of the Vision Road Journey. The Vision Road Journey or the VRJ is a planning tool that enables individuals and groups to set clear visions that are climate change responsive, and then they're able to they figure out where they are now, and they set targets, and they also identify opportunities to move them to their vision. And for our very poor communities, that is where we have succeeded most, because they set a vision and they all then translate that to their households. And you go there and you find that they have a community vision, and they're so vigorous, they're so poor, but they're so excited to achieve their vision. But then we also have the challenge action tree that is used to assess the challenges and constraints to production and climate change adaptation. So the Vision Road Journey is also coupled with the challenge action tree, and it enables the households and the communities to assess what are the causes and then the problems, and then they adopt solutions that are locally applicable. The other tool that we have is called the empowerment map. The empowerment map is also another practical tool that identifies what and who in the surrounding can support climate change adaptation and mitigation. And so it enables the farmers to understand the relationship, the coexistence, and the benefits they have with the different components of the landscape and the different actors. Then we also take them through the gender balance tree, and that is used to assess who does what for himself or herself, for the household, and for the community in terms of climate change and adaptation. And when you do the climate balance tree, you find out where it is leaning most or who contributes the most. And usually you'll be amazed, it is usually the women that are contributing the most. And upon determining this, actions to balance the tree are then designed. And so the final ones that I would like to talk about is something we call the Mountain Highway. Now, the Mountain Highway is the same as like the Vision Road journey, but in order to achieve your vision, you usually need to take different pathways. So they draw different pathways to achieving their vision, then they populate them with different targets and how they are going to get there. But then they also need to do a resource identification map. They must identify the resources within their surrounding and how they relate or benefit from them. And usually that's the land, the forests, the water bodies, and everything. And finally, the other one we use most is the multi-stakeholder win-win challenge action tree. This tree enables the identification of the potential stakeholders involved in production and climate change, usually the local governments, leaders, and so forth, and then actions are developed to improve relations and promote environmental conservation in the landscapes. So those are, there's still more, but these are the main ones that we have found extremely useful. And these are the products of those types of engagements. The people that we work with cannot read and write. So they use symbols in designing their visions. So this is a vision road journey. Okay, I must go back. This is in the right hand left bottom corner is the vision. They draw their current situation, then figure out, they also determine where they want to go. They write the dates and in symbols. This is, they write their opportunities there, and they write their challenges down there, and they create a chart like that. And you find this in homes and in communities, and it is hanging on the wall of their living room, and they're all trying to achieve that dream. Then this other one on the right hand is the mountain highway. So again, they have figured out at the bottom where they are and where they want to go, and then they map out different lanes of how to get there. So in the communities where we're working, they have these, and these are different pictures of the different communities and households. And you find mountain highways, and you find vision road journeys and gender balance trees and everything, but drawn with symbols like this, because the communities cannot read and write, but they can draw symbols that represent what they're talking about. So that's our journey, our story around girls. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you so much, Freddie, for this inspirational story and all the tools you're using to get these achievements. It's really impressive. And I love connecting, Carmen and Freddie, it's all about the future and the long term, right? So it's the vision, the multi-lane highway, working with the youth. So that's beautiful. I'm going to open up the floor. So far, are there any questions or points people would like to share or raise? Yeah, I see Laura.
Hi, you can hear me well? So you mentioned the gender champions, and I was wondering if there were more men or women, or was it an equal proportion of both genders?
Okay, a gender champion is a gender champion. It means that they are no longer either male or female. Because once you become a gender champion, you almost lose who you are, because now you struggle for both to eliminate inequality. But yes, we of course struggle to balance, and because we give this training to both male and female, what would I call key selected people in the landscape, so that they can reach out for both men and women. So we train, we equip these tools. We give these tools to what we call champions, and we train them in 3 phases, and then they're able to translate these tools in their communities. So yes, we try to balance, but we also understand that once you become a champion, you must never lean on one side. So yeah, so but then we because we've equipped them, they keep multiplying the champions. There's what we call peer multiplication. We train them and they train others. So you get into a community and everybody has become gender aware and how gender affects climate change. And that's our story.
Thank you.
Thank you, Freddie. I see another hand raised. Annabelle.
Yeah, thank you, Freddie. It's really interesting to hear, and it's actually a similar question to Laura, but I'm interested if there were any if you experienced any challenges in engaging men and boys as kind of, let's call it, agents of gender equality change, and if you face any pushback, let's call it, and any solutions that you find to really get people on board. It's funny, it was something we were talking about in our team earlier today, so it's interesting to hear it come up in your talk.
Okay, I think that in all our communities, gender equality is still little understood. There's still a lot of even negative norms. But in training these champions, we are looking at gender transformative processes that can introduce the whole gender and financial inclusion in a manner that is receptive for everybody. So we definitely, as I said, for example, traditionally the land belongs to the men, but then what happens to the women? So we are trying to make sure that then we bring in participatory processes that attract the men to be part of the process. And then once we have found those households that have started practically sharing, then we use those as role models to actually then attract more, especially men, into the planning processes. So usually we start with, of course, reluctance, sometimes resistance, but when we then use the champions, when we say champion, this is somebody within the community that has been transformed, that has seen his household transformed, that can show all these charts and how they've helped them. So that person speaks to the other community members, and with kind of peer learning, they all begin to participate in the process. So the advantage with girls, it's a community-based process, but also a participatory process that slowly draws you to love it and then to appreciate the benefits for your family. So so it actually addresses in the design, it already addresses the challenges because of its participatory nature. Yeah.
Yeah, super. Thank you. It's really exciting to think about and something we can share with our partners as well, I think. And in our own communities, of course. Thank you.
And it's great to see how it works, because obviously, you know, these are strong traditions, strong, you know, ideas of role pattern, who owns land, who not, what kind of, you know, rights you have and not. So really to be able to break through and change, you know, the minds and ideas about this is really amazing. And also what you said about the sort of potential backlash, you know, if you support women, empower them, or they empower themselves, let's put it this way, but, you know, help them become more empowered and take up leading roles. Often you see like backlashes, like increase of gender-based violence, but that you tackle that as well, which is, you know, an important angle to touch upon, because it's usually people don't talk about it. It's usually, you know, doesn't come up in projects. So a really important aspect of this tool. And also when I was in Uganda 2 months back,
and
go ahead, Freddie.
Yeah, and also the whole fact that after you've done this, it takes down, reduces gender-based violence. I mean, for us, that has been also something that has been reported, that people have increased the capacity to work together in households. So we don't want, as I indicated earlier, we don't want the introduction of additional resources into the household to be the sources of gender violence. So we want to make sure that people are planning together so that money does not introduce new forms of violence in the households. So as we seek to do landscape restoration, we don't want to be the ones increasing gender-based violence, because we're introducing incentives along with landscape restoration. So landscape restoration as a business must be able to also ensure gender inclusion and financial inclusion, and contribute to eliminating GBV.
Sonia.
Yeah, well, if there's time for one more question, because I think it's amazing what you do and the tools you use and the impact. But I have a question about this payment for ecosystem services ID, because by coincidence, I was talking about this yesterday with some academics, researchers, and they were very critical about this idea of giving financial incentives, since in their opinion, no, it's kind of like a commodification of nature, like paying for nature conservation as no, if it was a resource that you can pay for, and when the financial incentive stops, then I mean destruction can rise again. I don't know if I make myself clear. So I have seen like these payment for ecosystem services function also very well in other parts of the world, but I know there's this criticism of like commodification and maybe a Western view on nature as a financial having only a financial value. So I hope I make myself clear, and I wonder if you have had these reflections and discussions within your projects or with the people.
Yes, we understand those arguments. There's always another view about everything. Yes, we understand, especially the academic arguments that kind of look at pace as a challenge. But for us, we are dealing with what we call low-level communities that usually are looking at what we call subsistence needs. So these people are, their biggest challenge is daily food. So when they are doing their livelihood strategies, they're thinking about tomorrow. And so they would rather invest in what we would call short-term investments. But forestry is a long-term investment. So there has to be a transformation of horizons, that you're trying to work with a smallholder farmer whose needs are subsistence needs and therefore has a short-term investment horizon. And you're trying to transform their minds to be able to invest in forestry, which is a long-term investment, which has a long-term investment horizon. So for them to do that transformation, there has to be an incentive. There has to be a reason that somebody chooses to put 1 hectare of their land under forestry, as opposed to under sweet potatoes or bananas, so that they can then harvest or sustain nature over a period of 25 years and more. So you sit with them, then they create a vision of nature. They understand that without forests, their agriculture will never succeed. They must understand that it is the forests that enable them to have water. It is the forests that enable them to have the rains. It is, so they look at the forest as their source of livelihoods. And so they make a decision that if I put my 1 hectare under forestry, it is going to improve our entire community, my livelihoods, everybody's life, and they make that decision. It is an investment decision that one has to make. And it is a transformational decision from a short-term investment horizon to a long-term investment horizon that is a characteristic of forestry. Now, when they make that decision, it is an economic decision. So the incentives that come with that enable them to live it out. As long as they're able to get those little incentives from for example, the carbon, they use them to establish multiple income streams that divert them away from the forests. Those little incentives enable them to leave the forests alone. And the simple little agreements they have for the carbon, for example, that allow them to sustain their woodlots for 25 years and above, they use them even as collateral. They can get financing from local financial institutions based on those local agreements, local PACE agreements, because they can guarantee that they will receive funds over a period of 25 years. And then in our case, we are able to provide those payments ex ante, that is upfront, so that they can then use them to even sustain manage the forests or the woodlots they have established. When you plant a tree, I promise you, every year you look at it and it looks like nothing is happening. But to keep a tree for 10 years, 20 years, there has to be some reason you do it. And then if you have planted 400 trees in your hectare and you're not touching them, God help you, there has to be a reason that you are looking at these 400 trees and they better benefit you something. So the other thing we do is using that little income, or what we call incentives, we enable them to start up what we call green enterprises that within the forests. So that they don't have to actually cut down the trees when these little incentives come. The incentives are not big in terms of amounts, but the incentives are like, here is some little thing, use it to actually develop more things, and then your forest is going to be there for you, and the community and the whole world is going to benefit while you're also benefiting. So they have non-timber forest enterprises like beekeeping. If you have a hectare and you've put beehives in that hectare of trees, I promise you, you will never touch your forest, because the honey you get from there will outpay all your other little enterprises you have. So we have established green enterprises like that, and then we encourage. That's why we call it landscape restoration as a business. It's not just.
If I can cut you down here, Freddie, because there was so much honey, which I saw also. And the interesting thing is that you're rotating. So during COVID, people could not access, they weren't allowed to go out of their homes. So the honey was sort of crystallizing, so it wasn't useful anymore. And the reason was people couldn't go outside and they couldn't get their suits to be covered to collect the honey. So then also through another program, Freddie and the team, they worked with other community members who started making these suits to collect the honey. So it's this whole sort of revolving businesses. I would also like to move to some questions for Carmen. Helene, go ahead, and then yeah, we can see if we have some questions for Bolivia.
No, thanks. I was just also reacting on the question on the commodities and forestry, but Freddie had a very long answer already. I was just wondering, Freddie, are you working with people who have only individual plots of land, or families, or persons have individual plots, or also community or communally owned forest?
We have both. We have community owned forests. We call them community land associations. They own community forests, and I think Frederick visited some of those. So these would be 300 hectares of forest, or something that have been kind of titled and given to the management of the local communities around. Those also develop business cases around those forests, but also we aggregate individuals. We have over 15. We also have over 15,000 smallholders who have got woodlots of an average of 1 hectare each. We aggregate those, and then we are able to aggregate their carbon and be able to sell it and then send back the payments to them.
Yeah.
So
well, you made very clear, I think, about this question of the commoditization. It's also people need the land and they have to make a living from it, and yeah, it's maybe a bit of a romanticism to think that we want to keep forest for the forest. People have to make decisions, either to allow people to build a road there, or to log, or to use it themselves in another way. These tough decisions. But I was also trying to react a bit on the gender-based violence that was mentioned. I've worked in the past quite a bit myself on gender, also gender and land and land rights, but also on credit, microcredit. And the thing is, so we had gender, of course, female champions, female leaders. But when years later, the organization visited back all these women and interviewed them specifically what it has meant to them to be a female champion. To be a champion in their community, it has not always been easy for them. I mean, having champions also means putting yourself out there and having reactions from either men or women in the village towards your position as a leader. So that gender-based violence would disappear because women are more, knowledgeable about gender differences is not always the case, I would say. So yeah, it's great to have champions, but it's difficult for them as well to be in those positions sometimes. It's not easy. I just wanted to put that up.
Can I divert your question to Carmen as well? If Freddie, yeah, if you can keep it short, then we, if you want to respond. Freddie?
Yes, I totally agree. I think that life is not easy. It has never been easy. But yes, for us, the trick for us is the tools. I think that for us, we don't think that the individual has the capacity as an individual to do the transformation, but individuals must be equipped with transformational tools. Our emphasis in Girls is about the tools. What tools do you have to enable the people to engage practically? So by using these tools and symbols and whatnot, and getting both men and women to participate in using symbols they understand, you create kind of curiosity and they participate practically. And so we think that for us, it's like when you equip me with so many tools, I become a counselor. So our hope and success so far is reliant on the tools that we have equipped these people with, and the ability for them to engage both men and women in trying out the tools. As long as me and my wife have created a vision road journey, I think that's the beginning point for us to work together and therefore eliminate, we put all our interests on the table, and then we put them in the vision in a multi-lane highway, and then God help us as we move along. So I think that for us, our hope is what can we put out there, and then how can we plan properly together, and then of course the rest is in God's hands, so to say. So yes, it can be difficult, but it can also be exciting, and we are looking at the exciting points and trying to minimize the challenging points.
Thank you so much, Freddie. So let's turn to Carmen. And because you had that spectacular video. And so what you said, there is this immense change in land use, right? In Bolivia taking place, so much soy, so much cattle grazing for meat. And you're working mostly with the next generation. Can you tell us a bit more about the challenges, how you're working with them, with the youth as well, but also, you know, on a higher level, to protect the rights of the indigenous communities and their territories?
Yeah. As I mentioned, the processes of land use change is going very fast. That is one of the biggest problems during these last years. Unfortunately, this is a very intense process, no? And the maintenance of the ancestral knowledge and culture of the community in particular will define how this process can be managed. No? As more intact the local ancestral culture remains, the community's relationship with its environment will be much more empathic, no? More stronger, showing a much more complex use of natural resources in the community's relationship with its environment. I remember, no, and some good experiences working with youngs and women. Really we have to engage that part of the population because they are the most impacted group of people. No, that's why we define it to work with them. And the process of education also it's very important in this case, no? Because for the local people who used to live
with in a rich landscapes. It's very difficult sometimes to measure how the land use change will affect their quality of life. That's why we trying to insist to the local people, because unfortunately, without forests in this kind of ecosystems, the water is disappearing time to time, no? And we have landscapes very dry, without a capability to maintain the local population. And that kind of processes is very important to share, no? What's going on, what will be happening in the future, and how the local population will be affected in a very short period of times. That's what we were trying to insist in our work with the most fragile part of the population, like are the women and the youngs. I don't know if I explain what's our problem here.
Annabelle.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Carmen. It's really interesting to hear about the models that you're using and working with, and it's something that my organization we're working a little more with youth, and it's really interesting to hear that. But something I've been thinking a lot about recently is like intergenerational wisdom and sharing, and I'm really curious to know if you've experienced sharing the ideas and the maybe solutions of the youth with the elders, and then maybe also vice versa. So are they also receptive to the ancestral wisdom and the wisdom of the elders with the youth as well? So I'm curious if that's also something that you're maybe looking at, is connecting the generations.
Yes, I agree with your point of view, no, and that's very important, because these changes, for example, which are happening here in the Amazon basin, in all the countries, it's terrible. If you see what happened in other continents at the same latitude, you can find that there is no good news. No? Unfortunately, when the people take out the forests, the rest of the biodiversity disappear at the same time. And we are located in a very fragile ecosystems, and that's why it's so important to work with those portions of the societies, the youngs, no? Because they need to understand what's going on in the relationship between the local populations and their environment, and also the women, because the most of the times they have to take the responsibility to care all the families, and because for example, if you have industrial agriculture, the men, the adults, the most of the times engage with that kind of activities, no, and what's going on for the future. It's not easy to think in the future when you have too many needs to obtain money in a short-term time.
Thank you, Carmen, for this. Are there any other questions still for either one of the panelists we had today? Well, then maybe I would like to round up with a final question. What key message would you like to share with everyone still here? Is there a key message which you really want everyone to know? Who can I ask first? Carmen or Freddie? Oh, Carmen, I see you talking, but I see you are still muted.
Yes, sorry, I have some problems with my mic. Unfortunately, in this global perspective, especially seeing how the landscapes are changing very fast. My message is without forests, like the Amazon forest, will be no water, and that is very important. It's absolutely necessary to stop this process which are destroying the natural ecosystems. It's really pity to see how this fast transformation is going so fast, and sometimes it's necessary to try to reflect with the entire communities, and also try to involve the local communities in this kind of decisions. The presence of these big companies who are earning a lot of money is meaning to that the local opportunities are disappearing so fast for the local people. And for us, it's very, very important to reflect with the local authorities and try to arrive to other levels of decision makers to understand what's going on when we have this process of which are damaging our local ecosystems. That is very important to show at different levels. And I think this kind of places that you are organizing, it's very important to share what's going on at the local level, and in what measure we can contribute and establishing some alliances to try to save some local resources, and trying to care the possibilities for a good future for next generations.
Wow, thank you, Carmen. And like you say, it's also about the connection, what you say, biodiversity, water, climate, which, you know, is aggravating only more, becoming more and more dry. And just while you were discussing the authorities, just briefly, how the relations with the Bolivian government, are they supportive? Can you say a bit more about that?
Unfortunately not, no, because we have the Bolivian government this last 10 years decided to try to develop as soon as possible, and they open completely the doors to receive other kind of investments, like in mining, for example. No, my country and the rest of the countries here in the continent, in South American continent, are a lot of minerals, for example, no? And we have in our area work, for example, a lot of rare sands, rare great minerals, which are very interested for new technologies, for example, no? And these processes for land use change is running very fast, not only for industrial agriculture, also for the mining activity. These last years, for example, here in Bolivia and the other tropical countries in the surroundings, like in Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and Brazil, the gold exploitation became very, very important, no? And these last years, in whole the Amazon basin, we have these processes growing very fast. And that means to use the mercurium, no? Which gets into the ecological chains. And that means that the locals are time to time going more and more, how it calls, affected by this kind of activities, no? And that's why it's happening. And then it's very important to work to reinforce the reflections at the local level. Yeah, and we found the women and the youngs, which are the most fragile part of the local people, the local population, trying to understand, and through environmental education, and also trying to reflect in another levels of decision makers. For example, some people from the parliament trying to involve in to touch this kind of problematic, no, and try to advance in some way, trying to look for what's going on at the countryside. It's not easy. Unfortunately, as I told you, this last long period of this government, we are more than 10 years with this process, which is which their priorities are try to attract the more investments in that kind of business, no? And the mining and the oil production are two sectors which are growing very fast, and these are the worst way to develop a future for the local populations. No, it's not, as I mentioned, it's not exclusive for my country. I think that is happening in the rest. No, I think that's happening in the rest of the countries at the Amazon basin, and also the Chaco and the Pantanal areas.
Thank you so much, Carmen. I saw one final question. Reinier, does it matter who's answering? So the question is, how will the role of women in forest conservation influence the narrative on feminism? Does it redefine it? Is it specifically for Carmen, or who can I give the floor for this question?
I can say something very fast.
Okay.
No? In our experience, we privilege to insist working with those portions of the societies because they are closer to the nature. The women at the countryside have to offer have to feed the kids, and they work close to their plantations, close their agricultural production. And also they have to look the source of water for have some possibility to clean and satisfy the needs of the kids. And then that's why it's very important to reinforce and work with them. For other side, we are working also with other leaders, including the men's, trying to get involved in that kind of reflection. But this land use change, and I said, this international business who are promoting the big investments for which are destroying the nature has really a big impact into the local population.
Thank you, Carmen. And I see, because we have to round up, but I see Pauline of EcoTrust joining us. Welcome, Pauline, in the final minute. Freddie, yeah, the floor is yours. Final words.
Yes.
Would you like to respond to the question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to share. I think that my final words is that we need to all work to reduce gender inequality by taking a gender transformative approach. And in our case, this gender transformative approach is using the gender action and learning system tools across our interventions to ensure the generation of community and household visions for conservation. These visions need to be equitable, and once the visions are generated in an equitable manner, then we can guarantee or almost hope for gender equality in the conservation. Then the other aspect is that we need to be thinking of creating conservation champions that are also gender change agents, promoting gender equality, joint planning, and participation of all households and communities in biodiversity conservation. For us, this has contributed to transforming the negative gender norms and reducing gender-based violence. And it has also enabled us to identify key risks, increasing the volume of cash, equity, and investment opportunities in rural households. I need to point out that GAUS is a methodology that is implemented in 3 phases. The first phase is called the catalytic phase. It provides tools for gender-inclusive community engagement, visioning, planning, and joint implementation for the envisioned biodiversity conservation plans to facilitate equal participation of men and women. The second phase is about leadership skills and strengthening, and it trains and transforms conservation champions. The third is about sustainability planning, and it's about mainly the achievement journey 2. I would like to say that if we will need to equip the conservation champions with gender transformative tools, if we are to increase the gender inclusion and financial inclusion. Without tools, practical tools that engage the communities, then we may not be able to move the communities to the next future level. Thank you.
Thank you, Freddie, for ending on these words, and very, very true. And like we saw today, you know, there are huge in the Chaco Pantanal and the Cerrado, huge impact, you know, on local communities, indigenous people, women, youth who are extremely impacted, but also where, you know, solutions lie, where they can work in solidarity and yeah, do their best to keep their rights, their territories out of, you know, the big businesses. So a big applause for you, Carmen, for all the work you're doing. And also Freddie, thank you so much for all the tools you shared with us today. I think there were some exciting tools shared, things we can use in the future, and like you say, really go for transformational change. So I would like to end with people at the center of conservation, in which women, gender equality, women's rights are, and indigenous people, local communities are respected. I would like to thank the panelists for the amazing stories. Thank you, Sonia and Hilde, for the technical support and organizing everything from your end. And of course, you all sitting here, asking questions, having these discussions. Thank you